Turning on now. So how did it go? Are you there?
Um, I've got the stream up now, I think.
Okay.
No audio. Oh, maybe hold on, I might need to,
Hello? Can you hear me now?
yeah, I can, yeah. Was my audio output in Discord?
Okay. So how did it go since last time?
So good. I didn't end up doing, like writing any posts that I'd sort of like talked about. However, I did have some, good things or, did some good stuff. Where's my learning
Okay.
report? Um, Yeah, so over the weekend, I wrote some letters that I've been meaning to, which were good. I feel like I'm getting a lot better at like higher quality writing quicker, that's more like communicating what I actually want to communicate better. Um, so that's sort of good. Then I got some feedback on that as well, so I went through a few drafts, which was nice. Oh, by the way, there's like some uh, construction-y type repair stuff going on in my building today. So it was loud this morning, but it seems to have been getting better, but just heads up in case that happens.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, there was obviously a fair bit of like I spent a bit of time on the LessWrong stuff, and
Oh.
replying to that.
Yeah, did you see my comments on what they said on Curie?
Some of them, I think, I'm not sure. Is this in the thread? In
Yeah.
the LessWrong?
Yeah, I just posted several more updates at the bottom in comments. Like
Um,
Vanover's latest post at the bottom was kind of ridiculous.
I don't think I've read these.
Okay.
I sort of, after the, what do you call it? The mod like replied back to me and was like, I don't think there's anything I need to answer. And this other guy is like representative of my views, which I thought was pretty crap in the sense that, I posted a long reply and he's like replying to other people in the thread and just like, oh, I don't need to reply. Anyway, uh, I agree that it's like a bit ridiculous that like apparently this guy's an admin. Um, I don't know how you'd tell. Like he doesn't even have a bio up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's bad.
Mm,
But anyways, so here's what he says. For what it's worth, I think a decision to ban Curie would stand on just his pursuit of conversational norms that reward stamina over correctness in a way that I think makes LessWrong worse than intellectual progress. Which, it's hard to tell what this is supposed to be, because it could be a straw man. Um, it could be that he actually thinks that's my position. It could be he thinks that's a consequence of my position, and I'm just like wrong about the consequences of the things I advocate. It's very unclear. But apparently he just disagrees with me about conversational norms, therefore I should be banned with no warning or debate.
yeah. Um, it occurs to me I was reading this earlier. Oh, I can't remember where it is, but somewhere in here you've got uh Weeks probably might find it.
I'm definitely
Um,
not in favor of rewarding stamina over correctness. I've
no,
put a
I
lot of
agree.
effort into not doing that.
This is one thing that I feel like has become a bit more evident through like all the LessWrong stuff is I don't think they have a very good I'm not sure if it's like they don't have a very good model or whatever, but they don't accurately uh like predict how like what you think, I guess, in
Hmm.
terms of what you prefer. Um, yeah, and then they're sort of making decisions based on that, based on their misconceptions of that.
Yeah. They're also rather like disorganized and they're not really very rule based,
Hmm.
which they don't seem to see the need for rule based things. They're not accusing me of breaking a rule.
No, yeah.
To ban
Which I
people
think,
just because you think that they're like not great, while also like bragging about how not trigger happy you are is kind of ridiculous.
um, one of the things that gets me is they don't even have a rule saying that discussions have to be productive or whatever else. Um, like,
Yeah,
or that, it's, and the thing that gets me is
all
that
sorts of discussions fail at productivity. Like that's just a common outcome.
they could easily, like, have a thing like that. Like, FYI, we have social norms here. They're hard to write down, but if you're going to be really, like, fictitious or something throughout the community, then we'll warn you and ban you. Like, even just something like that would be an improvement. Um, but yeah, it doesn't seem like they're interested in any of that.
Yeah.
Anyway, but it's well, it is what it is. I was going to post in the LessWrong thread that I was going to withdraw from the, what do you call it, that thing, and I was going to update my bio on, what do you call it, LessWrong to explain that. But as it turns out, if you put something in the bio, it doesn't autosave. So unlike other text fields on the site, it doesn't autosave. Um, and you have to come down here and click submit. But if you, for example, like do something like click manage active subscriptions first, then it just wipes everything that you put in there.
Oh, I see.
So
That's
anyway,
the same kind of user interface quality as how they tell you you're banned, which is
yeah,
only available via the password update form, not the login form.
yeah, that's pretty funny. I mean, they evidently, like, someone realized that there was like an error or something that could occur here. Um, but they're just, yeah. Anyway, but yeah, I did see the stuff about what do you call it, their problem with sexual assault as well, which I started, like, reading a bit. I didn't have too much time at the time, but it was like,
Yeah, there's
man,
more, and it's bad.
there was one thing where, like, they didn't start an investigation for months because they were dealing with something more serious, but then like they
Yes,
mentioned what it
and
was,
the
and it's
person
like,
in charge of the place was also dealing with multiple personal crises,
it's
and
I
admits having no idea how to deal with an investigation. But yeah, I think they have sexual assaults like at a higher rate than their ability to investigate them.
Yeah, that's bad. That's really bad.
Or, I mean, they have alleged sexual assaults at a higher rate than they investigate them.
Um, well, I guess it's one of those things. I don't know why people aren't. Uh, well, I guess maybe people, like, there's a lot of reasons people don't go to police about this sort of stuff. Um, and there might be, like, informal sort of allegations or whatever else that end up back at Less Wrong staff or whoever manages this stuff. I don't even know, like, who would manage it, whether it's decentralized or what. But yeah, anyway, they're a community that doesn't like to acknowledge their own deficits.
Some people will write about their deficits and stuff. Like, there's a post about how effective altruism is full of lies, but it doesn't seem to get adequate attention. It's relatively easy to not come across it. Some of this
So I think
stuff
I
got linked from that guy who defended me in the ban thread. He was linking to several things, and then if you go like a step removed from them, you start finding all this problems with the community.
um yeah. Well, maybe one of the reasons that they're not trigger happy is like people just end up leaving of their own accord because they, post something like this and it just gets ignored or whatever else, and it's like, why am I bothering?
Yeah, one
Um,
of the discussions of the polysexual culture that comes on to married people and tells them poly is rational. Some of the commentary on that was like, I think everyone here either is fine with it or oblivious, or else they would have run away like very quickly. So you get a very self-selected group
hmm,
with all the normal people leaving by themselves after being horrified.
yeah. Um, I wonder if they think they're an echo chamber or not.
I'm sure they think not. I can't imagine that their own self-opinion to that is yes. They think echo chambers are bad.
I think I saw the EA lies. That was a thread on LessWrong, right?
I don't know.
Anyway, I think I saw something about that somewhere, and I didn't look into it, but I was curious. Um, that is one thing that like I was thinking about a bit recently, in terms of there's this idea in effective altruism that something like get a high-paying job so you have a lot of money so you can do stuff with the money that you prefer to do. Um, and I don't know if that's like good or not. I think it's easy to misuse. Like if you know, I don't know, started, getting paid $15 million a year to do bad things doesn't sound good. Um,
Yeah, and if you're not involved with a charity, it's very hard to know who to trust to tell you what to put your money into.
mm,
Like,
mm.
there's just these people who say, we're the experts on where your money should go. You make the money and we'll decide what to do with it. And, there are, of course, rival experts who would also like to tell you what to do with your money. And you have to find some way to judge for yourself or have your own trusted, like, social network help you judge or something. You can't just go to EA and be like, well, these people seem rational. I'll just give them money for their causes. That's not a good approach because it's too easy to get frauded or whatever,
Um,
or just fooled by
it, fe-
idiots.
yeah, it feels like there's an interesting, like, there's this idea of, oh, you should earn money so you can do good things with it or whatever. Um, why is EA so homogenous, it feels like, in their views? Like, that idea as a core idea doesn't imply what you should do with your money or what is a good thing to pursue or whatever else. And I get the feeling that they're all pretty much the same, like they share a lot of views. So there's something like else in EA that I'm not quite sure.
Lincoln tutoring, but 2196.
Um, yeah. What's AMF, by the way? Is it like, does it matter? Just a charity.
Oh,
Anyway,
I think it's a meta charity that decides where to put I don't know what it is. It doesn't matter. Some sort of
yeah.
charity.
But yeah. Um,
Oh, it's anti-malaria. Just a regular charity.
yeah, okay. That makes sense.
Anyway, they can have like popular posts with basic errors in them and no one seems to notice, and they're not very into criticism. They
Yeah.
certainly did not have a friendly response to being called out for it being incompetent.
Yeah. That makes sense.
But if you
So
downplay
I
it and
think,
say, hey, I have this minor correction, they'll be like, okay, we made a minor correction. They're not going to be like, we have a systemic problem.
yeah, either, yeah. Is there a bigger
Whenever,
case here, or why did this
yeah,
slip through our cracks? Are both general yeah, sorry.
whenever you get to
Go
the
on.
point that your criticism has a big impact, is right when it's going to offend them.
Yeah. Um, yeah. That's sort of an interesting, I guess, a point in general that the more offensive something seems, or the bigger the criticism, then the more it, like, even if it's like small stuff that's offensive, um, yeah, that's like the serious stuff you need to really care about. But yeah.
Regarding holding back because you're improving,
Mhm.
that's going to be an ongoing problem. Like, especially if you just make continual progress, it'll be a forever problem, hopefully. So, the rate of progress might go down, although ideally it would stay the same or go up. So this is not necessarily a problem that just goes away. Although it's pretty common that you have like a higher rate of progress while learning some existing knowledge, and then a slower rate of progress when you have to do more of a pioneering thing. So then you're more stable.
Yeah. Um, the work stuff is more along pioneering lines. Like a lot of the stuff that I'm thinking about or reading about with like regards to FI, is stuff where I've got like other material or other people are familiar with the material, so it's easier to uh like error correct essentially.
When you say improving a lot, do you mean improving at the work topics or at writing?
Oh, writing.
Okay, that's what
So
I thought. So then it's
yeah,
more learning. You're still behind other authors, so it's less
yeah.
pioneering.
Um, oh yeah, sorry. The writing is like the activity of writing I'm worse at. The content is potentially pioneering, and that's the sort of there's a mismatch a bit there. Um,
Yeah,
I also like the main reason that I've like held back on that stuff particularly is essentially like comparative advantage in that it seems just I get more out of other topics at this stage. Like with this stuff, I can't necessarily like share it openly or whatever else. Um, so it's harder to
right.
then get feedback and use that as part of the process of improving. Whereas with other stuff, obviously I can.
Yeah. You should probably plan for potentially having an ongoing learning curve where whatever you make in the next year, you're going to be able to do significantly better 5 years later, rather than planning to make things that last indefinitely.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. No, I agree.
Is that a specific person, like a real example or a fake example?
Which one is this? Sorry.
Tom Scott,
Oh no, that's no um so
YouTuber,
he's done some like number file and
two
computer file
million
stuff.
views.
Um but yeah, but so he did one in like 2014 where like he's more general in this one, but he particularly focused on electronic voting via like the voting machines used in the US and stuff like that in 2014, which, there's lots of problems with those. But there's also lots of different models and stuff. Um, anyway, I thought that one was bad, but it was, it's old, whereas this is more recent, and someone asked me to like respond to it type thing. Um, anyway, I made some notes walking through it the first time. So these are all the good things I could think of. Um, so he's starting to hedge now, which is good. Um, but yeah, but basically there's problems with everything he says. Um, like he starts out by saying that, or one of the things that he says early on is like anonymity and trust are the two big things. And uh, people need to like not be able to prove how they voted or stuff like that. Um, if that was actually a core concern, then preferential voting in general is not possible. There's a thing called the Italian attack where you use the like least significant votes in the same way that you'd have like least significant bits to encode information, which becomes particularly easy when you have, for example, like 150 candidates, um, uh, which some of the elections in Australia have. And then just all
Oh,
the
you leave
votes
secret
at the end.
messages in your vote.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can't really encode much in the way of a message, but you can have something that's unique. Like you can definitely choose.
So more of a password.
Yeah, like if you agreed with someone that you would put a particular pattern in there, then after the fact they could go find that pattern and they'd see that there's only one vote, and so they'd know how you voted because the full ballot is public.
Yeah.
I actually thought of this as a way to like when I was working on or before Flux was Flux. Um, I didn't realize it at the time, but I've got a thing in here where like I think somewhere, or maybe I didn't publish it in that, but it would be a way for people to like prove that they voted for the neutral voting block, which was the name before that. And then I later found out that it's called the Italian attack. I think it was a few years earlier that someone thought of it. But yeah, so there's that, like, you know, he talks about like various things that paper voting doesn't have that electronic voting does, but paper voting does have all those things. There's like, you know, he criticizes like e-voting on the basis of like DEF CON's hack the vote thing, which is like, okay, fine, but that's like, you know, particular stuff. That's not a general criticism. Then there's some other misconceptions, like everyone needs to be able to understand and implicitly trust the method. But I don't think people understand the current methods we use in paper voting. There's like individual steps that they understand, but in terms of the full system, it's really, really complex. And then there's other stuff like, you know, he brings up man-in-the-middle attacks, which he calls more difficult than in the past, which I think is a bit ridiculous. Yeah, and then like, you know, failures in processes of electoral commissions, and therefore things are bad. Yeah, he doesn't even like address blockchain stuff. He just like dismisses it with a look. Well, where's 945? I can find that. He's just
Yeah, so it
like,
sounds like mainstream pandery social stuff.
yeah. It's just this guy puts himself as an expert about it, or puts himself out there as that, which is,
Well, yeah, he does have like 5 computers on screen.
well, this is in conjunction with the Center for Computing History, and they're doing like a series on like basics, from what I can tell. So yeah, there we go. Yeah, so it's like, I think it's like particularly bad in this case. The previous one uh was via computer file, where they just, and you know, they do all kinds of topics, so it's not as bad necessarily. Um, but yeah. Anyway, but this one I thought was particularly bad. Like, there are lots of bad ways to do electronic voting, just like there's lots of bad ways to do paper voting.
Do you have concrete goals that will be achieved by criticizing that video?
Um, it answers some stuff that people have asked me to in terms of Flux. It is part of a library of criticism that I'd like Flux to build anyway. In terms of, it's not immediate goals though. Yeah.
Do you have goals for Flux figured out?
Some of them. So in terms of the immediate stuff, I want to like, well, particularly it's about building up a library of criticism. There's also some other immediate goals regarding like operations and stuff. With there's a WA election in March, which we have a decent chance to do well at. Yeah. But I've yeah, no, I've definitely been a bit distracted recently. So I haven't really been focusing too much on all that. Distracted is the wrong word. I've just been prioritizing different stuff.
Yeah, there's also the bigger picture. Like, you can look at what is the whole world, and then what are its problems, and then what are leverage points, and then which leverage points are the most important, and what large picture changes in the world do you care most about, and that kind of analysis to see where to put your effort if your
Yeah.
goal is to improve the world. I don't know exactly what your personal goals are, like if you want to make money or something else, then it changes what to aim for, or what's useful, or what's like success.
Yeah. So I do have more thoughts on that, but some of them relate to like business and stuff. So I don't want to go into them on public stream, but in general, Like, I mean, I have thought about this. There's reasons that I'm not like spending like that I don't plan to, for example, like go full time on Flux stuff or whatever else. There's other things that I think are a better path, like, to an improved world.
Hmm. Yeah, and
Yeah,
there are other factors like what skill sets and resources you already have can tip the balance for which things to work on.
mm. So yeah, um, I might. I'm just thinking maybe I should uh might write about that. I'll keep it private, but I don't mind sharing it with you.
Okay.
But yeah, because there is like, I mean, Flux is part of it. Like improving the world is I don't know if that's just like it feels a bit shallow as like a big goal in the sense that it doesn't have specificity to it. But yeah, there's a lot of like, I think there's a lot of processes and systems that are like not very good. And there's potential to like improve a lot of them at once. Um, which I guess we generally see when people come up with good ideas. I was watching a brief video the other day. Actually, it was from Tom Scott about the world's like oldest perpetual bond that's still paying interest. And it's from a Dutch water company or something or other, and I think it's Harvard or Yale or someone has it, and like every year they get like 11 euros or something or other. Um, but they mention in that like when bonds came about, like that was a financial innovation, having like a bond that paid interest. So like stuff like that, I think, with innovative things, we can change things pretty quickly in sort of those like deep systemic organizational sort of aspects.
Yeah, I just saw Justin's messages from earlier. Regarding rich people
Uh,
hiring consultants to figure out how to donate their money, the problem is that there are like bad consultants. How do you know who to hire? If you don't understand the
mm,
stuff yourself, you can't interview consultants and figure out which ones are actually correct or good or whatever. It's a hard problem. You can try to ask them, like, explain it to me in a way I can understand why you're better than the other consultants and what, like, measures I can look at to see that you're right, and so on. But even if you do that, they can just say a bunch of stuff that you might be fooled by, even if they're crap. Like, it's hard to tell the difference.
yeah, I was thinking about I can't remember where I read it. It might have been something like Rich Dad Poor Dad years ago, um, where someone was commenting on like running a business, and it's like, I don't bother learning all this stuff. I like surround myself with smart people, type thing. Um, which yeah, makes intuitive sense, except that you need to know how to judge whether they're smart or not. Maybe you get lucky, but if you don't have a good way of doing that and you just listen to other people and sort of like try and bootstrap that process via other people's opinions, then uh, I think you'll probably just reliably end up in echo chambers and things. Um,
Yeah, I think there's there's a shortage of like good intellectual discourse and explanations of who's a real expert and stuff like that. Much more than a shortage of money. If you just go get a job and make some money, you're not fixing the larger problem, which is that most donations are used pretty badly.
mm,
You can make a much bigger impact if you could figure out how to help donors be more efficient than if you go get a job and become a donor.
well,
Like
I
there's
mean,
much more of a brain power problem than a money problem.
another thing that occurs to me is that if you donate to a charity, like charities generally don't pay as much as the private sector. Um, what sort of quality of labor are you going to get? Like the only time you get high quality labor is when someone uh like really good at something is doing it. Um, and I don't think they're you know the majority or anything like that. Um, yeah, I don't know why we would expect particularly good results most of the time.
Yeah,
That's
I
good.
think EA fools a fair amount of people into thinking it can tell them where to donate, and I think that it's not very good. Doesn't
Hmm.
have paths forward, doesn't have good methods of error correction, doesn't have good methods of forum moderation, doesn't have good methods of engaging in intellectual discourse with not only each other but the broader world, etc. Yeah, I remember that, Justin. That he said that people's wives are more hostile to non-conventional donations than the men are, in his experience, and that holds things back.
Is that I wonder if that's entirely like a social status thing. Like you can't trounce around saying I donated $1 million to Sens, whereas you can say, oh, I donated $1 million to like anti-malaria thing or, you know, another charity like that, or a political thing.
Yeah, I think it's a conformist thing where they don't want to be weird and they want to do things their friends agree with and so on, so they stick to the more popular stuff.
Some other specific goals I just thought of, by the way, were um, I posted them in one of the rooms, but um oh, oh no, there we go. There's some bills in Australia about electoral funding stuff, which I think are pretty bad, that I've got to want to write a response to.
If Bezos committed to that donation while he was still married under his wife's pressure, then it should come out of her divorce money, not his own money,
Yeah, I agree.
in a way.
They split amicably though, didn't they? Was there any like funding thing in that?
He got like many billions of dollars, like 68 billion or something.
Whoa, that doesn't sound amicable.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe she was great, yeah, but yeah, that's a lot of money. I think people, yeah, vastly overestimate the benefits that their partners or that partners provide in business sort of things.
Yeah, I think that alimony or divorce settlements or whatever, the amounts should be tied to consumption, not to business holdings. Like, suppose they'd stayed married, how much money would he have spent on her over the next lifetime?
Yep.
Which is a different thing than how much assets would he have owned.
That also, well, one of the reasons that I'm not necessarily, although I don't necessarily agree with that, is thinking about like uh, business people who. So there was that case about I think it was a Canadian couple. Where was this? It was posted in open discussion. Canadian couple, uh, and they weren't married. They split up, and she got like a $50,000 a month alimony,
Uh-huh.
uh, which seemed excessive, particularly because the relationship wasn't that long. Oh, sorry, the relationship wasn't that long, and part of the reason that the relationship was there is like he spent a lot of money on her. Um, like if a relationship starts because someone's spending like lavishing the other person in gifts, and then it stops after 2 years, it's like the gifts keep coming, sort of thing. Like this feels a bit broken.
Yeah, the point is just that the sort of lifestyle expectations that spouses have relate to consumption expenditure, not capital accumulation.
Hmm.
So you can at least
Yeah,
exclude something, and then uh, Bezos's ex would not get 68 billion; she'd get 1 billion.
yeah. Potentially over a lifetime as well, as opposed to I don't know what the situation was like, but yeah. Because I think is alimony is not really a term used here, but is that like monthly payments as opposed to like a
Oh, I think
lump sum
so.
in a divorce matter?
Yeah, I just meant all the things. Doesn't matter which one.
Maybe it's no. It looks like it's
It's just everything. Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Okay, so this quote up here, intellectuals who are too busy to talk with everyone should have written policies for who they talk to. Did you list this as something to debate or something you agreed with?
Oh no, something to agree with. That was like
Okay, just checking.
yeah, where did I put that? I've got a section at the bottom about debate stuff. Um, oh yeah, sorry, that was why I couldn't find it. I added more. Yeah, so I particularly meant that I should like write and publish stuff for that. So that was like just as I was reading the debate topics, that was like, oh, I should add that up here. So yeah, so I had some anyway, when we get down to it, we can talk about that.
Okay, and then there's debate topics at the end.
So one thing that just thinking about it, I mean, in terms of the speedrun thing, so
Yep.
new guy came along, so used the new route that I came up with, has pushed the time way, way down. My feelings now are basically like, well, you know, maybe I could compete with that, but the amount of practice and stuff that I need to put in, I'm not sure it would be useful anymore. Like his movement he's practiced a lot more than I have, I think, over the
Yeah.
weekend. And it'd now be like, so I'm sort of torn between practicing in terms of try and get like more efficient at practice. Um, that's really the only thing I feel like I could get out of it now. Maybe there's more efficient routes, but looking for them, you know, I'm not sure it's worth spending the time. Yeah, but I
Yeah.
don't want to just drop it without if it's yeah.
It's good to have the experience of really polishing something and seeing what like really high level near perfection is. You can get that in a lot of different places. A lot of people have never done it with anything, like they've just never had ultra high standards for something. Speedrunning is one of the places people actually get that that's like reasonably accessible. Like it's
Um,
much more accessible for speedrunning than say mastering physics.
yeah, okay, yeah. I was going to ask whether stuff like coding particular things could fall into that. But I get the impression, yeah, it could. But yeah, but with speedrunning,
It's
it's
it's very,
yeah, go
very
ahead, sorry.
hard with coding to reach the same level of mastery. Like it's a much bigger thing. You can learn a lot and be good at it, but you don't get as like quite near perfection. Like there's so much further you could go in coding. Coding as a
Oh
field is
yeah,
going to evolve way more. Whereas this world record might be like near task perfection already. Like it potentially just can't come down much.
there's at least 3 seconds that he could have saved in that run, like in this one,
Yeah,
I
I mean
reckon.
I'm sure it can come down like a little, but
Oh yeah,
maybe
yeah,
the
but
task can't break 150 for all I know.
yeah. Well, we're definitely getting closer to the limits of the route. Like there might be some faster routes, but it's hard to tell. Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
but I
the
mean,
point is just
I
that
don't
it
think
like you
everyone.
could be very near perfection because it's a much smaller topic than
Yes, yeah,
coding.
okay, yeah, yeah.
So
Oh,
you start optimizing tiny details.
with coding, by the way, I was thinking about like a particular bit of code as opposed to like not something super trivial, but so say like I don't know, like a database ORM or something like that. Like if you wrote your own uh thing of that sort of nature, I guess it's I don't know.
That still sounds
Um,
like something where 50 years in the future, someone will look at it
we
and be
could
like,
yeah
"This is crap. I'm gonna make a new one in an hour, and it'll be better."
yeah. No, I can see that. Yeah.
I mean, they'll have much better tooling and like huge advantages, but
Mm. I don't know. I'll probably practice a bit more and see whether I can make any improvements quickly.
yeah,
And if I
you definitely don't have to. It's just I do think there is value in. I think people, most people give up too early on things they think are repetitive, and they don't take it as far as they could. and they don't actually know what that's like because they don't have experience with it. They just think it's going to be boring.
Yeah, and that would be why I'd abandon that, is because I think it's, yeah, like from here it feels like, okay, practice like cornering particularly. Yeah.
Yeah, I've done grindy things before, like a bit, and there's aspects of the experience that are interesting. Like one is the more it gets repetitive, the more it becomes autopilot, and then you get to start thinking about other things while you're doing it. Um, and that experience of being able to do it while thinking about something else is something not everyone really has. And then one of the things you can think about is like further improvements. So you optimize it more while you're playing, and being able to learn while doing it instead of separating the learning process into a like separate step is actually a nice thing that a lot of people have trouble with in general. It's a little like learning while having a discussion. Like a lot of people can't really do both at once, and that's bad. Or like, thinking out loud, like brainstorming and talking at the same time. Neither one is autopilot enough, so they can't do both at the same time.
So one thing that I notice about this guy's, just on that topic, this guy's runs, um, so he has, and there's sort of, it's getting a bit of an issue now because every one of his runs has either like music or like random YouTube videos in the background, which is just really annoying, and you can't pay attention to like the sound cues and stuff. The mod sort of
Ah,
complained about it. Um, but what it does mean is like some of the stuff that it feels like is listening to, it's not just random music. There's like dialogue and stuff. So yeah, just speaking about like being able to do other things with it because you're autopiloted, um, is uh, yeah. I think this guy's probably got a bit of that.
yeah. Another experience I think a lot of speedrunners have is it gets practiced enough that they can do it while they're tired, distracted, talking to chat on Twitch, in a bad mood, all those things. And that's maybe, it could potentially be eye-opening for someone that a lot of their usual excuses aren't as important as they thought, not as debilitating. Like you can actually, if you know what you're doing, you can still do stuff, despite it not being a perfect mood or good situation or whatever.
Yeah, that's one thing that really surprises me when like a speedrunner is, yeah, talking to chat or like reading stuff or whatever, and they're on like world record pace and like talking about random stuff and whatever, and like the weekend. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
that's a good point.
he's at Break the Record Live when he got the new
64.
SM64 run with the large bounty on it. Was like extraordinarily tired when he got that world record. And he'd been playing bad all day, and he sort of like relaxed and just played on autopilot.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, so another example is I was playing a duet level and trying to get a finesse trick. I don't know if you know what the game is, but it doesn't really matter.
Uh, iOS like go back and forward, rotate, spinny thing, right?
Yes, yes. Right. So there's finesses, how many different rotations you do, like how many times
Okay,
you
yeah.
touch the screen basically, and you're trying to minimize that.
Oh, so
You
you're
have
constantly rotating, and
well, you
then
let go.
oh, okay.
You have to let go
Oh,
and
yeah,
switch directions or pause at certain points.
yep,
But you have to like let go in like frame perfect positions and have exact timings and stuff to minimize how many touches you need.
yep.
So I was playing this level where it had been reported that a certain like technique was possible, and like I couldn't get it at all. And I played it enough that it's like a 60 FPS game, and you can do like trials in like 10 seconds. So you can get like a lot of attempts, and you can be like, I was really close and it didn't work. I was really close and it didn't work. And I did it enough that there's like no way that I wouldn't have gotten it by luck, given there's only 60 frames in a second, and if I'm within like 5 frames of it, 100 plus times, how could I never get it? But
Yeah,
then I
yep.
got it like really, really sporadically, and it was really weird. And it turned out to be related to a glitch. and I eventually figured out what the glitch was. So it's like literally an impossible problem under normal circumstances. And I still, yeah, but I kept trying, and I eventually figured out what the software glitch was and understood it. It was related to when you die. If you're holding a direction when you die, then when you start your next life, you're a couple pixels offset from where you're supposed to start.
Yeah, okay. My intuition was going to be to do with like if it's operating on like a 60 FPS timer, then I can't remember how long it takes to spin round once, but if the angles aren't like exact, then
Oh, if you do a
sort of
whole
like
rotation, you could be off
uh
like by a degree or something.
yeah, sort of like subpixels in Super Mario Brothers, where you can't necessarily control or measure them, and so if you can get these like weird fractional uh parts of a degree, or weird fractional angles that you can't actually repeatably
Yeah,
uh
I
yeah
understand.
get yeah.
The game did not have that though. It was every one frame of rotation was some fraction of 360 degrees, like say 6 degrees or something. So
It was
that
an
it would,
exact, yeah, okay.
yeah. You could rotate in full circles and it would never get offset weirdly.
Yep.
It's just that the glitch where it positions you when you respawn, uh, if you're holding a direction, it offsets you by less than one frame of turning, which is how you
Yep.
get to different positions that weren't normally possible.
I suppose that you then might be able to stack that as well. Or could you stack that, or is it just a one-off offset?
No, it's a one-off.
Yeah, okay.
The respawn process always tries to put you at the correct setting, and then you can be offset by 3 degrees or whatever.
Yep. Yeah, okay, that makes
So,
sense.
anyways, it's an example of going like much beyond most people's patience for repetition, and then actually making a breakthrough.
Yep. Yep. Should we think about the debate topics? I might go to the bathroom before that, though.
Sure.
Yo, so I went through the full list that you'd put up,
Yep.
by the way. Um, there were some things that I just didn't know enough about and didn't have an opinion. Everything else pretty much was like this is all of my thoughts, essentially on stuff where I might like disagree with things. A lot of it's partial, but yeah, but otherwise, I think I agree with you on most things.
Okay, yeah. So I had a thought about debugging. I think that's a good example of people being really persistent sometimes. Where they actually
Mm.
believe the world is comprehensible. If I keep looking, I can figure this out. It'll make sense. It can work, etc. Which is an experience a lot of people have never really had. But like that's what my Duet story is, and yeah, I think code debugging is a very similar process.
Yeah. I don't know any programmer who's said that they don't think that bugs can be fixed, like, or that there are certain bugs that can't be fixed. I
I
don't know.
think there's a lot of
Um,
bad programmers who I like they wouldn't quite say that. They like don't solve really hard bugs. They're more the kind of person to create a bunch of bugs.
yeah. I have heard of things where people have like found either compiler or hardware bugs looking into a software bug, but those are reasonably rare.
Yeah.
That would be the one case where I could see people like sort of more legitimately saying uh, that a bug is like unfixable, particularly if they didn't have
Yeah.
knowledge of the underlying systems. But yeah,
Yeah, you can definitely say like I think it's a bug in the OS or I think it's a hardware bug or something. I don't think it's a bug in my system and here are my reasons and then stop. Like you don't necessarily have to pursue it past that point.
Mm.
Like sometimes you're building on a proprietary platform or something, so it's like really hard.
You can confirm bugs in those cases though. Um,
Yeah, there's a fair amount you can do. Like you can come up with a reproducible test case.
yeah, yeah, something where you can put assertions everywhere around it and like isolate, even if it's a really really complex setup. There's like one part where you can put assertions and prove that there's an issue. But yeah, I think it's a good point.
Yeah, speedrunners, by the way, are quite often surprised by how low times can go. Like, it's entirely possible that your game can go under 90 seconds. Or maybe under a minute. Like, these things happen in speed games.
Well, yeah, I mean the like going from so the with the previous world record route, I dropped 20 seconds off, and then with my new route, which like I thought was faster, but that's like another 25 seconds. It's been it's nearly 45 seconds dropped in a week. So
Yeah, it
there's
wasn't a
definitely
super optimized game.
no, not at all. I think part of
Yeah.
it was like not having stuff like the map makes it really hard to try and optimize routes and stuff. Um,
Yeah,
that's
even
part of
highly
it.
optimized games, though, like Mario 64, uh, every year they seem to take off another minute or something.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
And
Ocarina of
they
Time is a
yeah, Ocarina has gotten major new glitches recently.
yeah, but even after what 20 plus years of it being out, there's always things to discover.
Yeah, I was gonna say that with Mario 64, they only got a good way to deal with canonless when individually, personally, Sockfolder decided to look at it and figured out a human usable setup that was fast enough that people preferred it over YOLO.
This is the where you've got to jump at a weird angle and without breaking off the corner of the thing, there's a star inside, and you sort of clip through and grab it. That's canonless, right?
Yeah, basically, you walk along the little wooden ramp. It's near the beginning of the run,
Mhm.
and you
Yep,
just
yep.
run against the wall and slightly clip a few pixels into the wall and touch the star. Yeah,
Yep.
so people are just YOLOing that with like a 1 in 5 success rate or something. And then he
Um,
came up with a setup.
Actually, I yesterday I checked Alpha Legend again because I hadn't seen anything from him in ages. His last video is like 11 months ago. But one of the videos was like the time that Ocarina speedrunning like almost died, and it was to do with a way to glitch a bottle early on in the game, and it was faster, but there was like an 80% failure rate, and a whole bunch of people dropped out in like the month that this was done until a new setup was found. Um,
Oh, yeah, I know. It was the Deck Your Nut drop, which had a
yeah,
like
yeah,
1 in 7 chance or something.
yeah, that was like 12% or something. It would have been so painful and annoying to do. Well, actually, some of the GoldenEye speedruns are like that, where there's one that I think actually has a 12% chance
Yeah.
of doing it. Actually, this happened just the other day. Yeah.
Yeah, I know there's a video about it where the mine position or whatever is 1 in 8.
Yep. And you got to use two controllers like taped together for the optimal thing. It's a bit crazy. But that
Yeah.
was a what 2008 record or something that just 12-year record.
Yeah, no, there are speedrunners have done stuff with worse RNG than that, and sometimes like hours into the run. Like 100% OOT has the Dampe Heart piece like 2 hours into the run. It's
Is
a
that the grave
10%
thing?
chance. Yeah, you dig up the graves, it's a 10% chance to get it. It's like 30 seconds per try. So if you don't get it in the first few tries, which you usually don't, then you're losing minutes.
Yeah, where are you gonna make that up? Um,
ZFG just got a world record with like the worst Dampe luck ever. It was like 12th try. Like he lost like 5 minutes there. And
one of the
still got
great
world
things,
record because the new route is so good.
I sort of like it when that sort of stuff happens, like when there's a major mistake or like a lot of time lost somewhere in a world record. Um, it means that there's a lot of time to make up and there's a lot of like opportunity. But yeah,
Yeah, so even stuff like that, there's still more room for improvement. People can take things really far, and just that general concept is important of having high standards and trying to optimize further. And it leads to interesting places. Like if you really want to optimize a speed game, it can lead to learning programming and looking at the ROM and so on. And like
yeah,
some of those people start looking at memory locations in emulators and
yeah.
understanding what's going on better.
Or like the raw assembly, which I think like Mario
Yep.
64, the uh the fire animation thing, like when Mario falls in the lava, that's like glitched. Um, and by changing some instructions, you can get the proper thing, which actually just looks like smoke as opposed to this weird thing. But yeah, no, it's interesting that um, oh, yeah, leading to I don't know what you call it, different domains. Um, like you've got to go through different levels of emergence to become more and more capable in that, like the top level type thing, or the thing that you're interested in.
Yeah. Even something like OOT speedrunning might be a beginning of infinity, basically. And even
Mm.
if it's not, it can lead to quite a bit of stuff.
I think is arbitrary code execution used in the any percent run now?
I think so.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think they set it up so that their angle writes to memory, and then they like spin in a circle and it writes all the items or something.
Oh, I think it's a wrong warp, I think. Um, like
Or
the
maybe
angle
that's
is the
the no source requirement or something else version.
yeah, I don't know.
But they have a
Anyway.
setup where they get like all the stuff just in the forest.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, there was an arbitrary code execution in Zelda 1 based on character namings or like file
Oh,
names.
okay.
I remember.
Yeah.
And I helped improve it because there's 3 file name slots and they would write their arbitrary code in 2 of them, and the route required naming your character Zelda, which is how you trigger Master Quest, like New Game Plus. And so you had to name one of your files Zelda and the other 2 with the arbitrary characters in order to write your code. And then you go to the graveyard and do a glitch with the whistle. And character names were 8 characters, and Zelda is 5 characters. And I suggested that the game probably didn't check the last 3 characters, so you could put whatever you wanted instead of white space, which turned out to be correct.
Neat. Extra 3 bytes.
Yeah,
Yeah, that matters when you've got what, 90
16
in total.
bytes. Yeah,
Yeah.
going from 16 to 19. The reach of stuff reminded me of something Patio tweeted. today that I thought was notable as well. Here we go. So a lot of people's attitude is there's this idea cares more about X than anybody would think is reasonable. Like there are these like nerds or geeks or whatever who care too much about trains or comic books or speedrunning a particular game or a particular old hardware like Commodores or something. Like there are people who are like writing NES games that look way, way better than real old NES games did today because they have better programming techniques
Yeah.
and stuff. You can take the old
Yeah.
hardware and make it actually a lot more powerful if you know how. And so that like that reach, the power of if you really pursue this seriously, it leads you to interesting places is important. And then on top of that, he says that this is sometimes tolerable in a bemused and content sort of way. Like normal people are like, oh, you're really into trains, whatever, have fun. I can tolerate that. Like it's sort of amusing. But until it becomes the reason that one starts winning all the other games. As in, sometimes the nerdy thing ends up being really powerful, and then they become better than everyone at everything. Like, that guy who's really into computers is now making way more money than you, not just having a weird interest.
Yeah. Well, that guy who was really into computers ended up making this like weird operating system for phones that no one used called Android, and is now sitting on a beach somewhere with $100 million in his bank account.
Right. And then the people who were tolerant before are less tolerant. Um,
Hmm.
they're like, what the hell? He just did that weird nerd thing, and now he got a bunch of money. That's not fair. Like, we were just putting up with him. Why is he rich now? You're supposed to get money for doing normal things like um cheering for your sports team. Like he didn't cheer for his sports team and now he's ahead of me in life. What the hell? There's most people's attitude is like very different than the speedrunner or programmer attitude.
Do you think it's the speedrunner slash programmer attitude is becoming more common though?
Yeah, somewhat. Like the internet really helps. It helps them connect with each other and form
Hmm.
communities. And having better computers really helps too.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't just help computer nerds, like it helps all kinds of people who are interested in control over reality and in being able to do powerful things have much better tools to enable them.
Yep.
Like it helps
Yeah.
writers even just having word processing in a keyboard is a significant help for writers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Riesman put a shout out to that in the introduction to capitalism, that the book could not have been as good without his Mac.
Um, One thing that occurs to me as well, just like stuff like being able to copy paste like different sections. Like if you were
Yeah.
writing it out on a typewriter, like and you wanted to move two paragraphs, like you what rewrite the entire page, potentially more if there's like not like it goes beyond the page and it like has flow and effects. It would be awful. Absolutely awful.
Yeah. On a sort of related note, one of the reviewers of Capitalism said that he was very reluctant to do this, and he liked the book, but he ended up cutting out like sections of pages from the book, like ripping them out so that he could separate them and go through them in a different way than when it was all one book. Um, Having everything glued together made it too hard to go through such a big book. So like if he had ebooks and like text search, it would have been so nice.
Yeah.
And the ability to copy paste quotes and save them instead of having to like rip the book and separate the pages and be able to organize it that way.
It's sort of funny. I don't think I've ever heard of someone doing that. But yeah, well, if you wanted to rip up pages to like reorganize it, you probably need two books if the pages are double-sided. Yeah. I'm just gonna go grab another drink. I'll be back in a tick. Okay. There was I just when you had the text document up before, um, one thing we did have, we talked like there was the debate thing and then teach overreaching, and I wonder if we want to spend any time on overreaching stuff.
Which would you prefer, one of the debate things or overreaching?
I'm not sure. I mean, we could talk about this, like the first three here. I think would be interesting to talk about, but not particularly useful. The debate thing might be more useful in the longer run, but I feel like overreaching is more immediately useful. Um, we haven't talked about it in some time, and I feel like I'm in a really different position to like the first 10 tutorials or so where we were talking about it more.
Okay, so what do you think overreaching is? How would you summarize it in like a paragraph or two?
Okay, so um, I'm just gonna like brainstorm the things first. All right, so I think um, overreaching particular like is a thing that we can do that particularly happens when we have a systemic pattern of having a bad approach to solving problems we encounter. That might be via ignoring them, or when we try and solve them, we have other problems, and so on. The net sort of effect, and I think this is a phrase that either I've read you using or something before, is like our error rate exceeding our rate of progress. Um, but
That's
it's
not quite
this.
it. It's
Okay, yep.
error rate versus error correction rate,
Oh,
specifically.
yeah, yep, yep.
That way the errors are accumulating.
Yes, yep. Um, uh, yeah, yep. So it's you can try or you can potentially do anything without overreaching. It might just be really slow because all you have to do is to keep your error rate under your ability to error correct. And that's always possible. Uh, it's not easy necessarily, or you might, have to. There might be a lot of other skills that you need. Um, but I think that's sort of it. So it's not a thing that is like a thing that X person will always do with Y subject. Like in terms of there's no way for them to avoid it. But it's a thing that X person might always do because of either their like knowledge or attitude or technique or things like that. Um, so I think it's particularly to do with people, not subject matters. Yeah.
Yeah, so what an error is depends on what your goal is. You can have more exploratory goals that are less ambitious, and then it's easier to make fewer errors. However, even with that, you can still make errors. Like you can be exploring a topic in an unproductive way and coming away with like an inaccurate overview, even setting aside not knowing the details. you could be doing ineffective exploring as well. However, you could have an even more meta goal of, rather than exploring, I'm going to like test out exploring and see if it's effective and whether I can do it or not, and do I need better exploring techniques, right? And if you're just doing a trial run to find that out, then maybe you could do that even if you couldn't explore the area effectively. And so often going to some sort of meta level can create some sort of easier goal, where it's like whatever you were failing at, you could develop a meta goal of testing whether you have that problem or not.
Yep.
But the practical consequences in general is that some things are currently beyond you, and you should probably basically leave them alone until you've figured out some of the prerequisites, or look at them in only the most like basic way, like just to sort of find out what some of the prerequisites are, or to like, I don't know, if I wanted to be a fighter pilot, I could watch Top Gun, and I could watch some documentaries, and I could like sort of see what it is, which would give me more information about, do I really want this? But I would not be ready to jump into studying like how planes work or other details, because I'm not even close to that sort of skill set or having any idea what I'm doing or anything. Like there's some more basic place that I should start.
Yep.
Or like if I wanted to design an airplane, I probably want to learn to design some simpler things first. Very hard to start there. But you can, visit an airplane factory and look around and see, do I like this? Does this seem cool? And get a better sense of what it is before embarking on the project. There are some ways you can engage with the end goal near the beginning. Like you can see people who know how to do it and see what they do, and get some information about what their lives are like, and does that seem appealing or whatever, right? And it's possible to like spend a day at work with a guy who does some fancy job you have no idea how to do, without overreaching, and just you don't understand everything he's doing, but it's a reasonable project, and you're not making too many errors at the goal of visit him at work and see what it's like.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So it's like the I don't know. I'll call it like going meta. Uh, so it feels a lot like transitioning between levels of emergence as well, in terms of like if your goal is building planes,
Yeah.
then you're swapping like the meta goal of like going to work with someone and seeing if you like what they're doing, swaps that like changes the level of emergence, and it's so I guess the when considering where to go with these like meta goals, because there's potentially like infinitely many of those, and so you've got to choose one which is capable, or with that you can do. Yeah.
Yeah, so part of the motivation for the overreaching idea was having discussions where someone says something and there's one or two errors, and then you try to talk about the errors, and then they respond and they make one or two more errors. Then you try to talk about those, and they respond with one or two more errors. And the overall effect is you never get back to the original topic, because they're making new errors faster than they're resolving any of the errors.
Yeah.
one of the ways this happens is that basically none of the errors ever get resolved, which is unfortunately fairly common. Or maybe a couple get resolved very quickly, but most of them never get resolved. If it hasn't been resolved in like 2 back and forth after the error, then it never gets resolved, is like a pretty common pattern.
Yeah.
Like, typos can get resolved immediately, and then anything more complicated means during the attempt to resolve it, more errors happen, and then you never get it sorted out.
So economic stuff seems like a big place where this happens with people, like talking about socialism versus whatever,
Oh yeah,
or capitalism versus whatever.
it's a big topic, complicated topic. People don't know a lot about it. They're not that good at it. So yeah, happens with philosophy, politics, trying to debate quantum physics with people. Any sort of large area of knowledge, it's going to be a common problem. Psychology.
I think people fundamentally understand something like this happens, because there are ideas like needing to go back to basics or like things like that that people occasionally embrace. And people appreciate that, if you don't work on your foundations enough, then it's going to cause problems down the line. I guess they just don't think it's general, is maybe a big part of it.
I think part of it is they don't know how to fix it. Having some awareness that their discussions are failing doesn't mean they know what to do about it. Sometimes they try to go back to basics or simplify, and they often don't simplify nearly enough because they're still overestimating their own knowledge and other people's knowledge. And they have a lot of resistance to things that they think are like insultingly basic or childish.
Yeah.
But it turns out that some of the disagreements and problems are in that off limits category, and then they're sort of screwed. There's also like this large category of stuff they think they know, but they can't really explain it very well. They're like, I've learned that, or everyone learned that in like 5th grade. And like they remember learning it sometimes. And like maybe they passed a test on it and their teacher said they learned it. And it can be hard for them to admit that they can't actually do it. And most of their peers can't do it either, and will certainly never admit the weakness of being unable to do it.
Yeah. I mean that one thing I've noticed more recently, basic calculus stuff is fine, but anything that's more than like basic calculus anymore, I yeah, just can't do. Even though I was like really, really good at it, after 10 years of not doing much more besides like basic programming stuff, with regards to it, it's yeah.
A lot of the stuff people were never good at. Like, the majority of people are kind of confused by fractions. And
Yeah.
they were not good at fractions in 5th grade, they were not good at fractions in 10th grade, and they're not good at fractions as adults. But they don't really like to admit that. Part of why discussions are so hard is it's hard to get people to answer like short literal questions. I think it's not all of the problems are people's low skill or ignorance or whatever. Like I think there's a lot of resistance to being grilled or answering to other people, like which is a sort of subservient social role.
Um, like well, yeah. Particularly short, simple questions like that tend to feel uh like if there's like judgmental sort of questions, they're more like that. They don't deal with like advanced concepts that people like to think that they're dealing with, like on a LessWrong sort of thing. So it feels condescending or childish because the question's short, I guess, which is don't think follows at all, but yeah.
Yeah, but that's what going to more basic things and trying to find where do we have convergence or agreement or whatever means. Like you ask short, simple, factual questions because those are easier, and you find out, do we actually agree on this? If not, we have to like go even further back, but if we do, now we know that our disagreement is in between this point and what we're disagreeing about, and we've narrowed it down to a range. But people often sort of sabotage that process, and they do things like take a very short, simple question and give a literally wrong answer that they could know is wrong if they would stop and think. And then you ask them a question about that wrong answer, and then they say another stupid thing, and then they leave. That kind of thing's pretty common. So yeah, they cause a lot of their own error rate because they're tilted or there are social dynamics involved or something, rather than lack of skill. Like, because I've got all these examples of people being horrifically bad at basic logic or basic reading comprehension or knowing the definitions of words or, very sort of basic skills type things. But those same people, a lot of them, when they're in a different mood and a different social context and so on, can manage to do some of those skills better. They're not entirely illiterate. They actually can read sometimes. They actually can understand basic logic sometimes if they stop and think about it without being biased and emotional and having a social goal that is taking up most of their attention in priority to figuring out the right answer. You get them in a different situation and they're not entirely incompetent, but it's hard to get them in that mode.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about the mode thing yesterday, I think. In that, so I still feel like sometimes I'm, not in a particularly rational mode, I guess. Like Tilted is a good example. But I feel like a lot more in control of that now. Yeah, I don't know, it's weird. Not weird, that's the wrong word, but yeah.
That's another thing people encounter when they try to optimize games really far, is that they run into emotion issues, tilt issues, stuff like that, and they find they have to deal with that, or it gets in the way of success.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I mean, this is one of the things is, I mean, rarely I feel like so emotions in speedrunning, I feel like is the exception, not the norm. Maybe we see a bit of it because there's like videos highlighting it. Sometimes there's stuff where
I actually disagree with that. If you watch speedrunners on Twitch, just like random ones, not people at GDQ who are on a huge stage, and they know they have a huge audience and they're on their best behavior, you just watch them like normally, casually, informally, I think the significant majority get pretty tilted, or at least they sound tilted fairly often.
Okay. The significant majority aren't like setting particularly good records though, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many games, and the streamers are self-selected, so they tend to have better times and to spend more time on it. So, it's pretty common to be watching someone with like a top 3 time in their game, and they're like swearing when they screw up or something.
Yeah,
a lot of them have pretty bad attitudes, which is kind of sad, but I think quite normal.
Makes sense,
but what I was gonna say is it's easier to work on stuff like tilt while doing something that you can autopilot pretty well, that's pretty simple, that's pretty repetitive. Like if you're playing that Speed of Light game, then and you get tilted, now you get to face your tilt while having basically as few as possible extraneous factors to worry about. Whereas normally when you get tilted, there's like several things going on at once, and it's harder to isolate the tilt by itself. Like if you're in a social situation with other people, it's much harder to deal with emotional problems while also dealing with the other people and what's their fault and so on. Whereas if you're interacting with a simple computer system that's completely repeatable, and you're the only like really complex thing present, then it's a more controlled situation. You understand, I think.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I'm just thinking about I guess I don't know if you want to solve a problem, then like something like tilt or emotional issues like that, then it's incredibly worthwhile making sure that like I mean maybe you can put yourself in that situation, but that you isolate the same way as like experimenting with things. You want to isolate all the potential variables, control everything that you can, so that it's background and it's not going to influence the process or the result or the method or the outcome or whatever.
Yeah, it's like a minimal test case when you're debugging. The bug is tilt, and if you can trigger it in a very simple situation while repeatedly playing a game, that's very similar to a minimal test case for a bug.
Yeah.
And if you can get like 5 different minimal test cases for the same bug, now you're even better off because you can look at what's the same and different between them. Where's the overlap?
Yep. Yeah. Yep. Or even if they're not minimal cases, just having overlapping stuff can help isolate that and
Yeah.
figure it out.
So like if you get tilted while playing 3 different speed games, now you have more of a pattern. You get more info than if you only have one example. Or if you get tilted, 10 times while playing the same speed game, that also helps with the pattern, and it can help rule things out. Like you got tilted on a day when you had gotten enough sleep, so that's probably not really the problem, even though you were sleep deprived on the majority of the days.
Yep. Um, yeah. So you might know that sleep makes it worse or lack of sleep makes it worse, but you know that it's
Yeah,
not the problem.
right. And then you can observe you've gotten tilted in the morning, you've gotten tilted at night. You've gotten tilted while you're hungry, you've gotten tilted when you were not hungry.
Hmm. Or like tilted from like both RNG and things that you could control that were deterministic,
Right,
or only
yep.
one or whatever. Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
And you can find that you've gotten tilted while you hold the world record, and you've gotten tilted while you're trying to catch up on the world record.
Hmm.
Or not. Like, you might occasionally find one of these things you only get tilted in one of the cases and not the other.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the real value of like having all of this or being able to so actually this feels a bit like this sort of process feels a bit like inverse yes no type stuff. Um, like you're bifurcating things each time when you can find like this or not type situations. Um, each time you're eliminating or like potentially separating it. So if it was like in the record case, for example, like you don't get tilted when you hold a record or something. Um, uh, or maybe you only get tilted when you hold the record. Um, yeah, I'm trying to figure out what I meant by inverse in terms of the description of yes no. Um, but yeah, like yes no is the like sum of a cross goal sort of thing as opposed to like breaking them down to find out what is causing a particular thing. Um, I don't know. I need to think more about it.
So another big part of overreaching is not giving enough consideration to prerequisites or project planning. People don't always consider, what does it take to achieve this goal? What's my plan? What resources does this plan require? Do I really reasonably expect this plan to succeed? They often just sort of jump into things. They often sort of expect that whatever it is should be achievable for them for some reason, even when it's AGI. But reality doesn't grade on a curve. You don't get an A for effort. Some goals are just beyond your resources. And resources is a very broad concept. The way I mean it, like a skill would be a type of resource, or time, or people to help you, or favors from people in high places. Not just things like money and iron and silicon. So any sort of prerequisite is a type of resource because it's trying to get some sort of knowledge or something that would be useful. So anything that could possibly be useful is what I mean by a resource, like just the fully generic term. So anything that could be a requirement for making the project work is some sort of resource. So if you fully explore like what all the things are that you need to make the project work, and then you compare them to what you have available, a lot of people don't do that, and then they embark on projects that are unrealistic. For example, their schedule is like way too booked, and they're trying to do 15 projects, and any 3 of them would have been realistic, but not all 15. And trying to do all 15 causes them to only succeed at 1 instead of 3. Like they managed to abandon enough of them fast enough to free up time to succeed at 1, but they've wasted too much time on the extra 12 projects that they no longer have the time to succeed at 3.
Yeah. This there is I don't know how to put it better, but if you're under capacity, then your output is less than it could be, but you could always pick more stuff up. If you're at capacity, your output is maximum, but if you're over capacity, then yeah, you start dropping off again, and the more over capacity you are, the worse and worse it gets, and there's no way to sorry, there's no way to pick stuff up to there's no way to like pick more up to increase your capacity. The only thing you can do is drop stuff,
Yeah, so
which
for
is pretty
some
hard.
sorts of resources, you can increase capacity. You can get a second computer to run the software on that's being really slow or something. But for some resources, like your time, it's hard to add more capacity.
Yeah, okay,
Or
yeah.
if need to learn physics, it's possible to do that, but it's going to be like a long wait while you go get that prerequisite. It would make more sense to just get it first before starting the project that requires it, since it takes like years.
Yeah.
Right, so that's another one they often do is they start projects that have prerequisites that take years, and they don't take seriously how hard those prerequisites are, and sort of expect to just learn what they need as they go along. And then on a related note, they often have no track record of doing anything similar to some of the things they're planning to do. Like, are there previous projects where you learned what you needed as you went along? If you haven't done that yet for a small project, you probably shouldn't plan on it for a big project. If you haven't done it with a prerequisite that's like a whole field, like I learned psychology as I went along, then, being like, I'm going to learn physics and programming as I go along on this project is a lot to expect when you don't have a track record of doing anything similar.
Yeah. Similar track record seems a difficult thing to conceptualize. Like it's not always possible to figure out what a similar track record would mean, or
I think we
Yeah.
can usually we do things that have some sort of similarity to things we've done before. Like, we're not doing
Mm.
something that's new in all dimensions, we're doing something that's new in 5 dimensions while overlapping with past stuff in most dimensions. It's a bit weirder for like infants, but then once you've gotten some initial stuff done, then you keep branching out on things that are somewhat near things you've done before. And that's what
Yeah.
people should keep doing.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense. Well, if people take that too literally in terms of doing things like similar to what they've done and stuff, um, I guess that doesn't, well, I mean, I guess it doesn't apply to stuff like, me learning grammar. That wasn't really that similar to stuff I've done before. Well, I guess, trees and stuff
If
were, but
no, if you stop and think about it, I'm sure you could come up with like hundreds of dimensions of the grammar project that are similar to dimensions of projects you've previously done successfully.
oh yeah,
Like,
no, okay.
try to brainstorm some. I mean, I think that would be
Um,
instructive because
yeah, so,
there's definitely, it's new in a few notable ways, and those are the ways that stand out to you the most. Like, they seem the most relevant or salient or whatever. But if you just start thinking of like stupid trivial dimensions, I'm sure you can come up with lots of ways that's similar to things you've done before.
um, um, hmm. I'm not sure if I'm being too general with the categories so that I'm like running out of things to do.
Okay, well, I wrote some more.
Oh, you've just swapped desktop.
Yeah, I triggered expose, and then I looked at it to see if it had shown something it shouldn't instead of closing it. It looked okay.
Cool.
Because it just shows the things from that monitor on each monitor.
Yeah, yeah. I also find that a bit annoying. Um, but yeah. So yeah, okay. So multi-day stuff. So I didn't have things like, um, uh, I've got coursework that's like learn from text. Um, yeah, project in English. Um, yeah. No, there's a lot of other stuff there.
Right, so if you really wanted to, you could list hundreds of things, and most of them would seem pretty trivial to you. But, sort of as a whole, it actually adds up and means the project is mostly actually similar to things you've done before.
Mm, yep. Yeah. No, there were very few. Well, what it meant was that I mean, particularly, I guess it's a learning, like, it was a learning project. The only really new stuff that I was doing was the course material, um, like, or the contents, of the grammar
Yeah,
article. There wasn't anything. I didn't have to learn to read new things. I didn't have to learn to use a web browser, which we didn't, computer. We didn't put that down.
yeah.
I didn't have to learn to talk to you or use video conference or whatever else. I didn't have to, learn to use a text editor or, I mean, I knew trees. That's sort of like one thing that maybe some people need to
Yep.
uh, learn.
And
But yeah, but
you also have an intuitive grasp of grammar already. Like you can read and understand and write sentences, and you can, for the majority of sentences, before we started, you could already intuitively say if they were right or wrong with pretty good accuracy,
yes, yeah.
grammatically. And you've
Well, even
already had more than 0 explicit grammar training and heard people talk about grammar terms before. Like you've probably heard noun before. Maybe you already knew that one.
yeah. Well, noun, verb, adjective. I definitely all knew. Conjunction.
Right.
That was a big one. But and I knew a lot of the other words. Like I'd heard participle and adverb and stuff. I just didn't know what they meant.
Right.
Um,
So then it's easier to remember them when you've heard them before.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense.
So theoretically, you could come up with infinite similarities and infinite differences. But I think you can intuitively see that there's more similarities than differences when you focus on things that seem like somewhat relevant.
Yeah.
You'd have a harder time coming up with a bunch of somewhat relevant differences that seem as important as these, I think.
Yeah. Well, another way to think about it is um, like the grammar project. The main. I'm just trying to think of how was it like particularly different. I mean, I don't think I've streamed that sort of thing before. Um, but the main thing was just that it was different only by the content. Um, and so
Yeah,
that's maybe one of the things that is worth thinking about, like if you're thinking about starting a new project, is there's lots of ways that things can be similar, and you might be able to like trick yourself by being able to list a bunch of ways that there's like things are always similar.
right.
If I was trying to discover a
Yeah,
theory of everything, I've done maths, I've done some physics, I've done, but how is it different? And that's where, yeah, this is
yeah.
the stuff
You
where,
want to have only a small number of major differences, major ways of breaking new ground. If you're trying to break new ground in 20 ways at once, you should do a few projects in between where, you keep doing 3 new things at once, and they can be small projects, and then you'll test that you can actually do those new things and get a little practice with them and see that they're okay. And it should go pretty quickly, and you can build up to the large project rather than just jumping into the whole thing at once. And that way, if
yeah,
something goes wrong, you can say, well, something has gone wrong with this project where I'm doing these 3 things. Therefore, my problem has to do with one of these 3 things. Whereas if you do the whole project, you're like, somewhere in these 20 things and their interactions, there's an error. Um, that's a lot harder to figure out and narrow it down.
yeah. That's one of the reasons that I like the idea of speedrunning Slowest Speed of Light as well, was that it was quick, it was easy, I knew how to do everything in it, and it meant that yeah, and I like, to be honest, even if I never touch the game again, I feel like it's been a pretty productive um, exercise. Uh, yeah, not just for me, but it was productive for anyone who wants to run that as well, because now there's like public maps and stuff like that.
Yeah. I like to play sometimes small games that are like small enough to master them or come pretty close. Like Duet, similarly,
Hmm.
it only has 2 buttons. You can go left and you can go right. Um,
Yeah,
and all you do is dodge things. So you can get like a decent level of mastery of that game and figure everything out.
yeah, that makes sense. I like that idea.
Yeah,
Just thinking
there
about
there are
some.
puzzle games like that, like Toki Tori or Beast, that are like fairly small and masterable.
Yeah, I've never played Tokitori. I think I own that, or there might be multiple sequels or stuff. But yeah,
Yeah, 2 came out somewhat recently. One was on Game Boy Color or something. They put it out on iOS, but I think it might be not maintained.
Okay. Apparently Steam isn't running, so I won't bring it up. But yeah. Hmm.
It's good to have some experience with running into the limits of the game or platform or thing you're doing or whatever, like running into the boundaries and seeing what that's like. Because a lot of people like play big hard games or do big hard projects, and then they think they're running into boundaries and they're like, oh, I'm like near the max, and they're nowhere near
Yeah.
the max. So if you've actually done like really small limited things like tic-tac-toe, and if you master tic-tac-toe, you find out this is what it's like to actually reach perfection and like solve the game, and you can't actually play better than this. So you start getting a sense of what hard limits are actually like. Tic-tac-toe is a little on the easy side, but for children it can be a good example.
Yeah. It's like or it feels like sort of you're limited fundamentally by like the union of your problems. And so if you only have one or two things in that union, uh, and maybe the problems are different stuff. Like if I, with the grammar, maybe I had, trouble with the grammar material and trouble with streaming or something like that. But those two things I can separate um, pretty easily. If it was trouble with grammar and trouble with reading, then it's really hard to separate them. But that like union has a lower ceiling than uh, yeah, any of the other stuff. So it's really easy to fool yourself, particularly if you don't know the components and don't know like what individual things you need to practice to get better at it.
Yeah, so a
The
good sign of overreaching is if you have trouble breaking something down into parts. Like if you can't go up or down the abstraction hierarchy or whatever. If you're just like too overwhelmed by it to say has, 3 subcomponents and then this particular subcomponent is built out of these things and like I understand all the parts at all the levels. If you can't do that, you might be overreaching. You might be just jumping into the deep end while having no idea how stuff works.
yeah, yep, that makes sense.
Whereas when you know what you're doing, you can say overreaching involves all these different concepts, and then for any of those concepts, you could go into a bunch of detail. And then when you're doing that, someone could ask about any part of it, and for that, you could, talk for half an hour. You have
Yep,
uh, a lot of underlying knowledge that it's all built out of.
yeah, no, that makes more sense. One thing that came up or that I thought of as well, is let me see if I can find it. So like oh, that's thumbtacks. There's something I named this really silly. All right, Google doesn't know. Anyway, but like at one point I wrote a minimal blockchain that used like WebSockets and HTTP servers and stuff to communicate because I wanted to get rid of the networking layer because peer-to-peer networking is hard. Um, but I've written like a whole bunch of like little minimal type stuff in that regard, and got, like a whole bunch of prototypes that aren't public as well of different things. I sort of feel like that's interesting. I'm not sure how many people have done that sort of stuff before they jump into bigger things because they, in the blockchain space, it's like, oh, I've done, a project that has 100,000 lines of code, so I won't have a trouble with any other project that has 100,000 lines of code. Yeah,
Right, yeah, no. And yeah, so there's steps up. Like there are these games like tic-tac-toe where you can get all the answers. And then there's a lot of board games like Monopoly. If you studied Monopoly, you could get really good at it and learn like what are the main strategies. Maybe there's like a kind of an optimal strategy you could learn rather than several main choices. I don't know. Um, but I think Monopoly has simple enough rules that you could get like somewhat close to mastery and like be really good at it and be, way above most players. And I don't know quite how complete it would be, but you could get to the point where like you're rarely surprised by anything that happens, and you've seen most of the situations before and already have an understanding of what to do about every type of situation and so on.
Yeah. Surprise occurs to me as a big thing. Like if you get surprised regularly, then that's like bad. You should be surprised very infrequently if you're not overreaching.
Right. Or if you're in exploration mode instead of actually succeeding at something mode, then being surprised more is fine.
Yeah. Well, arguably in exploration, you're like the expectation is to be surprised, so it's not that surprising.
Yeah.
It would be surprising if you were, doing something else, and the exploration was like part of it, and you weren't good at that or weren't explicit about that or whatever else. But yeah.
Yeah, so I've tried talking with people about things like what's your project plan? Why do you think you're actually going to succeed? What have you done that's similar but 20% easier that you have that you actually succeeded at? Like show me your track record of here's the first thing I did successfully, here's the second thing I did that was a bit harder, here's the third thing I did that was a bit harder, and now I'm working on the fourth thing. Like, what have you done at all to build up towards this? And often they've got like nothing, and then they won't listen and get mad at me.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. No, that makes sense. I think people, in general, have a bunch of trouble with that.
Oh yeah, off topic, I was gonna ask why your webcam disappears sometimes. Like, is it crashing or?
Oh no. So before it was just in the way, so I drag it off screen.
Oh, okay.
Uh, Sometimes, so right now it's fine. I've got this like this thing that will so now I can put them both on top of each other, but I can't get like Firefox will never be on top. Um, at the moment, I've got some weird bug. I'm not sure with what or why. Whoop. That's tutoring. That's fine. Where my mouse cursor doesn't change when I hover over stuff. So like I can drag this window out, but it doesn't. So I need to like reboot or something, basically. But oh no, I need to. Not having the mouse cursor means I can't tell whether something's pinned or not. Pinned on top. But yeah. But no, often it's just because I might minimize it occasionally or whatever else. But yeah.
I think children tend to start out pretty okay about overreaching naturally by default. Um, like
I
if they
presume that's
can't
like
crawl yet, they're not trying to run. And I think that they get pushed into overreaching. There are social expectations about what they should be able to do when, and they're pushed to make progress faster. Sometimes explicitly, like, you finished first grade, now you need to do the second grade stuff in every subject.
mm,
And so they keep getting pushed along to the next grade level and expected to keep up at everything simultaneously. Which, besides the fact that some of the kids clearly fall behind on some of the subjects, there's the problem that it doesn't give you a lot of space to get ahead on some of the subjects. Like if you're interested in one of the subjects and you put extra time into it, then you might fall behind on one of the other subjects, and you don't have leeway for that in school, so that sucks. But even before that, parents often want things from their kids, and the kid is under pressure to understand or pretend to understand what the parent wants and to try to do it and try to please their parents and so on. And that pushes them into doing things before they're ready to do it. The parent wants it before the kid has like understood it fully and is like prepared on his own to do it, and the parent pressures the kid to do it and the kid resists doing it. And that's what
yeah.
that early coercion is like, is the kid disagrees or often just does not understand and is confused about it, and the parent wants the kid to do it now and sees resistance as disobedience, and the parent doesn't think, oh, I need to explain it better and help my kid learn more. The parent thinks my kid is not listening.
Yeah. So this reminds me of I wouldn't. Well, we're pretty close to the end, but I wouldn't mind like if you. I'm not sure if you read this, but um, sort of like this. I was thinking about like a TCS thing that I think I half solved a problem. Um, but I haven't fully solved it. I don't know. Maybe we
Okay,
should.
so there was something you said
Yep.
earlier. I forget exactly what it was, but I was going to reply. I forgot. It was something about matching up your project difficulty to your resources or capabilities. And if you're doing more than you can do, or less than you can do, or the same amount. And I was going to say the right thing to aim for is less because there's variance. You need to account for things will go wrong. Sometimes you'll get more value out of a resource, sometimes less. You need a buffer. Standard TOC stuff. So
Yeah. Yep.
you want to only aim to use something like 2/3 of your resources. That is the proper goal. And what do you do with the extra resources? The answer is flex projects, right? We don't just leave them idle like a machine in a factory. You know, we don't want to do that with all our stuff, but we can have flexible projects that we can just pick up and do in our spare time really easily, like start reading a book when you have some free time. There are a lot of activities you can get value out of that are optional. So you only schedule 2/3 of your resources for like sort of important mandatory things, and then you spend 1/3 of your resources on flexible things that can fill in the gaps easily. So they provide value, but you can drop them whenever you need the resources for the mandatory projects. So you can do this with things like money or scheduling things during your waking hours. Or like with your work schedule. In a in an ideal world where you didn't have a boss telling you what to do and whatever, and you can organize it properly, you know, at most 2/3 of your work schedule should be booked with things that you can't just drop at a whim.
Yeah. That I think is rather the corporate culture typically is you should be scheduling at 100%.
Yeah, which is similar to the balanced plant that Goldratt criticizes.
Mm. Um, I wonder if I can find it quickly. Oh, we don't have enough time. There was I was thinking about there's a video I saw recently about it was something like movement amplification, or was the name of the technology, where they'd take a video and look at like really tiny changes in so it'd be like a video of like a static frame of like a machine running, and then they would uh amplify the difference in the signals, like the deltas, to create like these massively exaggerated movements. And you could start with like a video that only looks like there's a pump or something running that's like bolted to the ground. And the result of that is you get this like sort of thing that looks like it's vibrating back and forward or something like that. Um, anyway,
Mm-hmm.
there's some company that developed this tech and software uses it to like analyze plants to find out where the failure points are going to be before they actually fail. Because you can start seeing something like a crack forming and the concrete actually like shifting up and down as opposed to like, oh, it's
Right.
just old concrete or something like that. Yeah,
Right. It exaggerates it so that it's easier for humans to notice it.
yeah, yep. Um, I started thinking about that because I was thinking about like the idea of like balanced plant applied to like a mechanical system, like a single mechanical unit sort of thing. And that it's when it's overly balanced, you end up like often getting something like a resonance effect, where it can like throw itself apart um, 'cause it's too finely tuned. But yeah,
Yeah. So for next time, uh, possibly work on writing about goals and like life plan, big picture type stuff. and how
Yeah.
things you're doing fit into that.
So yeah, so I wasn't sure about like when we talked about goals last time, or in the learning report, I wrote some stuff, but where this is more like what you meant about the like, what's the bigger picture? How does it fit in? What are the leverage points or what are the strategies? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Cool.
What are the
I'll
prerequisites or the resources used for different things? Is there actually an understanding of success criteria and what they take, or is it still in a like planning phase? A lot
yeah.
of people
Yep.
sort of jump into trying to do the project before they know what success looks like. Like they don't start with I'm going to explore the area and figure out what my goals are. They start with I'm going to get started and figure out what my goals are as I go along. And that does not work very well with hard things. Sometimes you get away with it with easy things. And sometimes you get like some benefits from it with hard things. Like you manage to do something, but it's often, you know, more inefficient than if you're more organized.
Yeah. Yep. That makes sense. Um, all right, cool. That sounds pretty good. If I can spell benefits. Yeah, cool. All right. That sounds good. I'll end up writing about some other stuff as well. Before next time.
Okay, see
Maybe
you
we.
in 4 days.
Yes. Yep. That sounds good. I'll see you Friday. Cool.
Bye.